Okay, I want to make an update on the case which I think I've featured before, and that is the case of an Indonesian maid who was abused in Hong Kong. I'm going to read a bit of an article from The Guardian. Apologies in advance if I pronounce any names wrong, but I'll try my best. I won't read all the article as usual, I'll read parts of it and then put a link. This is from the British Guardian newspaper. A Hong Kong woman has been found guilty of physically abusing her Indonesian maid and put behind bars ahead of her sentencing in a case that sparked international outrage. Law Wan Tung, a 44-year-old mother of two, was arrested in January 2014 for seriously wounding her former domestic helper, Erwiana Sulastyaningsih, who left the city that same month. Pictures of the injuries sustained by the 23-year-old, who was admitted to a hospital in Indonesia emaciated and in critical condition, shocked Hong Kong and sparked anger in her home country. Law denied a string of charges including grievous bodily harm with contempt, criminal intimidation and failure to pay wages. But on Tuesday, Judge Amanda Woodcock told Law, "You're remanded in custody," after announcing to a packed courthouse that the 44-year-old had been found guilty of 18 of the 20 charges laid against her, including GBH and criminal intimidation. "I'm sure she was telling the truth," Woodcock said, referring to Erwiana, who told the court she had been tortured by Law. A jubilant soliciting Yan Singh, apologies, very hard to pronounce that name, clad in a black t-shirt with her face emblazoned on it and the word justice, told AVP that the verdict was read out and she was very happy and hugged nearby activists. Law meanwhile lowered her head but appeared to be calm. The only two counts of Law were not found guilty of were related to her treatment of another domestic worker. Ahead of the verdict, a small group of around 20 protesters gathered outside the courthouse, holding up placards reading "End Slavery." "We are workers, we are not slaves. Justice for Erwiana, Prosecutor Law Wan Tung," they shouted. And I'll continue on. Hong Kong is home to nearly 300,000 maids from mainly Southeast Asian countries, predominantly Indonesia and the Philippines, and criticism from rights groups over the treatment is growing. Amnesty International in 2013 condemned the slavery-like conditions faced by thousands of Indonesian women who work as domestic staff and accused authorities of inexcusable inaction. It found Indonesians were exploited by recruitment and placement agencies who seized their documents and charged them excessive fees with false promises of high salaries and good working conditions. I have to say, this sort of stuff really sickens me to the core, and it should sicken every decent human being. I've had some experience of working in situations with dodgy employers, but nothing comparable to this. So I can only imagine what these people go through. I do think there are people out there motivated by greed and motivated by their own delusional sense of power over other human beings, and I think I'm happy this case has ended up with conviction, but it is conceivable in many other cases out there that won't be as high profile as this one. And it isn't just Hong Kong, this is also a very big problem in Gulf countries, where abuse of Indian and Indonesian Filipino domestic workers is widespread, of domestic maids but also of male contractors. So this is a very huge problem in the world, and incidentally there's no country I think that's immune to it. We have also got slave-like conditions in the United Kingdom. Yes, in the United Kingdom. Quite often you have organised criminal elements who will take people's passports. I think I mentioned that there was a problem a few years ago, I think I made a video about this, of a group of Chinese cockle pickers who came to the UK. There was Chinese gangsters, basically triads, who basically took their paperwork, who made them work in very difficult circumstances. Although the interesting thing it did show was some of the British workers weren't much better off. But the point there was it was talking about the sort of exploitation that exists out there. Now, I don't think you have to be a socialist to sort of realise that there's something very wrong with this, and it is one side of capitalism that I am very uncomfortable with. I do think that far too often there is desire for profit over fairness. And when you have a situation whereby people are not in a position to adequately defend themselves, or they are threatened if they do try to defend themselves, that is very sad indeed, and very concerning. So I believe that what it comes down to is having a law is not enough, really, because, you know, if you have powerful employers who basically just threaten their workers and say, if you go to the police or if you report these things, I'll beat you even harder, or I'll take away your wages, most domestic workers are going to be too frightened to do anything. Or if they're not personally frightened, they're going to be frightened for their dependents, their children and so on. So this is a despicable situation. I have absolute disgust at what these employers do. I think they're cowards, I think they're bullies, and I think there are, in some cases, they're outright sadists, and they're absolute liars. I mean, for this woman to deny the charges would basically mean that the young woman is putting the injuries on herself. I mean, who does she think she's kidding? It doesn't say what the sentence was, but I do hope it was a significantly long sentence, because there needs to be a deterrent against this. But like I say, having a law is not enough, because there are a lot of employers out there, all over the world, who will find loopholes and who will think they can get away with it through threats and so on. What needs to happen is there needs to actually be some official statements, not just from the police, from politicians, saying that we are going to crack down very hard on this, and if you think you can get away with it, you will have to think again. I do support tough deterrence in this regard.